You are a cultural pioneer, or as I'd like to say, a culture-neer. You're daring to go where others aren't willing to go. The unknown doesn't scare you, it intrigues you. You're not satisfied with the status quo. Business as usual is not in your DNA. You're done with doing the same thing and expecting a different result. You're an explorer at heart and a trendsetter by nature. You were born with purpose, called to lead, destined to make a difference. You are a Culture-Neer. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Culture-Neer Podcast. I'm your host, Terry Gwaltney. Today, we're going to take just a little bit of time, and I want to talk to you about legacy. I want to also talk a little bit about the difference between success and significance. So much of what we talk about on here is how our cultures create these competitive advantages, how we create raving fans, more customers, increase the bottom lines, we can help other people, and so on and so forth. But, at the end of our life, when this whole thing's measured out, can be a big difference between significant life and what others would say that was a person that was just very successful. Before we dive in today, I do want to remind you and would like to invite you over to our Ripple Effect, February the 22nd. It's going to be at the Mountain Dew Park in Marion, Illinois. There'll be a show link in here for you to be able to grab a ticket. I encourage you to do that. Our topic this year is building a business beyond profit. So it really ties into a lot of the stuff that we're even going to talk about today. Having said that, though, let's get going. One of the things we've done in our organization for a long time, and we've really tried to fine tune it over the years, is every person in our organization goes through what we call a Life 360 plan. And really what that is it's evaluating all aspects of our team members' lives and really breaks them down into about 7 areas. So if you just took a big pie and you cut it into 7 different pieces, that's kind of how we encourage our team to focus on their life. And so during the course of the year, about every 3 months, we're doing an evaluation. And actually I have a picture here of one of ours. Much like this little pie chart, they'll do this evaluation of all the areas in their life, and they'll do a self-assessment of rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Obviously 5 being average. And so what we see is much like a wheel, can come out of balance. Those numbers can dramatically change from one quarter to the next quarter over the course of a year. So it's good to have the self-awareness of how I'm doing in some of these areas. Like, how am I doing in the area with my immediate family? How am I really doing in the area of my finances? And so, that needle is always moving. So it causes us to just really have heightened self-awareness of what I need to be focused on in my life. And why is that so important? Well, I think a lot of people in the business world, maybe we've learned how to be successful financially, but too many people are bankrupt personally. And what I mean is they've climbed the ladder, they've enjoyed a certain level of financial success, which brought them some security and brought them some freedom, but many times at what cost, at what expense, at what price? It's sad, but in many cases, it's cost them maybe a marriage. Their wife is, they're no longer on speaking terms. Maybe they no longer live in the same house. Maybe they lost half of what they had spent the first 20 years of their life building together. Now it's gone because of a divorce. Their kids maybe are distanced from them. They've been hurt through the process. An absent father or mother through the process because they were so busy, consumed in the demands of a business. I mean, being an entrepreneur comes with a lot of heavy weight. It's very difficult to mentally disconnect when you're an entrepreneur. It's not like you just shut that off at 5 o'clock. So there's real challenges. There's also real casualties. And I personally think that you can win at work and you can win at home, but it requires a plan. Nobody drifts just to success by accident. Hope in our life is not a strategy. As much as we need it, it's not a strategy that's going to cause things automatically to change. There has to be a plan. There has to be a strategy. Then there has to be good execution. And we understand these things, I think, in business. We understand, the importance of making decisions through values that are important to us. We understand having a vision of where we want our company to end up a decade from now, so we're marching towards that. We understand mission. How are we going to do that? How are we going to get alignment to do that? And there's a certain process and a way that we do that. But yet, how is it that when it comes to our personal lives, many times we really don't have a plan? Too many people really don't have a vision of, this is what I want this to look like in my personal life a decade from now. And they're struggling with that. And so I want to challenge you today to incorporate something that looks similar maybe to what we're talking about. I'm just going to share some things because we've seen benefits of this Life 360 plan. And just take a moment as we go through this and begin to pause and understand that when you get to the end of your life, are you really going to be celebrated by everything that you've accumulated? When you're on your deathbed, are you really going to ask to have your portfolio brought to you so you can look at it one more time, see how well your stocks are doing, how healthy your bottom line was, what your checking account balance looks like? Probably not. It's probably not the people that you're going to have gathered around your bed. And how many funerals have you been to where people get up there and they just go on and on and on celebrating how selfish this person was, how many things he acquired in the course of his life? No. What are they talking about? We're talking about his selflessness. You're talking about the person's generosity. You're talking about memories, shared moments. So in business, one of the things that we talk about a lot, and Stephen McCovey talks about in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the principles that he teaches is to begin with the end in mind. And I'm going to challenge you to do that as we go through this today. Begin with the end in mind. In other words, fast forward and look towards the end of your life. And what do you want that to look like? We may get through this today. We may have to go in 2 parts. I really don't want to rush it, but I think this is so important, because who wants to trade their entire life only to get to the end to find out I invested in the wrong place? Or I took someone else's advice and I've been spending my entire life climbing this ladder of success, only to realize when I got to the top of the ladder that it was leaning against the wrong building. The view wasn't really what I thought it was. There was this lack of fulfillment and contentment, and it cost me so much. Listen, guys, you can win at work and you can win at home, but you have to be intentional. You will have to have a plan. You will have to strategy. So that all starts with, just like it is in your business, what do you want that to look like? What do you want the end of your life to look like? I know this is going to sound a little morbid, but I challenged our entire company with this, and it was a painful process. I had many of our guys telling me, like, this was the most difficult thing you've asked me to do, and I did not enjoy this at all. And what it was is, I want you to think about the end of your life, and I want you to pause on that, and I want you to write your own eulogy. I want you to think about who would be at your funeral if you died next week. All the people that are alive right now, let's say they're still alive. And I want you to envision, like in a movie screen, that's your funeral. Who's sitting on the front row, the second row, the third row? Is your family there, your colleagues, maybe people that you go to church with, play basketball with, just people outside of your immediate family. And what would you want those people to say about you at the end of your life? That's a powerful thought. And then I challenge them to go and begin to start making lists of priorities of those people that were super important to you as far as what they had to say. There's some people that have things to say and you really don't really care about their opinion. But there's other people you deeply care about their opinion. And so beginning with the end in mind when it comes to your life is like, what do I want them to say? I spent my 70 years here and I have left a legacy. Because, see, I think legacy is not so much about what you leave to people, but I think legacy is more about what you leave in people. And so in that moment, what people are saying is something that you've left in them. You've touched them somehow in a deep way. You've made their life better. You've enriched them. You were there for them. Maybe you comforted them. You coached them. Maybe you just listened. Maybe it's your partner, for the last 60 years that you've been married. I mean, those things, guys, are super important. So how do you really begin to do that? Well, once you envision what that looks like, then you really need to sit down and begin to write. And I don't mean just the eulogy, but I mean, you need to write, what do I want that to look like? What I want my relationship with my kids to look like, my grandkids to look like, What do I want my financial, future to look like? How do I want my health to be 50 years from now? Think about that. And, all these different areas. Out of the 7 that we're going to talk about, one of them is personal growth, personal development. But if you don't take care of you, even in the area of like your health, are you going to be there to walk your granddaughter down the aisle? Or are you going to be there when your granddaughter walks down the aisle? Or maybe the question is, are you going to be there when your daughter walks down the aisle? And so I need to have a plan for that. I just can't, live entirely off fast food, sleep 4 hours a night, abuse my body with, all kinds of bad habits, and just hope that's naturally going to happen, because it may not. And the reality is, if you're not taking care of you, you can't provide for your family. You can't be there for your family. You can't be there for your team. You can't be there for your company. So those things are vitally important. So once you kind of sit down and craft what I want that to look like, then you'd also sit down and just begin to write, with that eulogy. What do you want those people to say? And what I would encourage you, those people that you envision being at your funeral, sit down, and if your wife is one of those, then what is it you want your wife to say? Your kids. What do you want your kids to say? What is it you want your best friend to say? And you just start going. And so those one-liners, those statements, then you can look at that bigger picture and you can begin to sum that up and like, okay, now this is my eulogy. This is what I'm aspiring for people to say about my life when it's over. Okay? The good thing is it's not over yet. If you're listening to this, you may have a lot of regrets for decisions you've made, mistakes, things you would change if you could only do it over. And you can't do it over. But you can start today shaping your future. Your history up to this point has had an incredible role in shaping who you've become, but it doesn't have to determine who you will be. And so the decisions you begin to make today begin to shape and become in alignment with that picture, that eulogy of what you want people to say at the end of your life. That's the challenge. So how does that work? Well, I think you kind of need to come up with, it's almost like your blueprint. 3 parts I think that come with this. Number 1, you need to understand what your needs are. Okay? The second thing is you need to create your plan. So how do I understand my needs? I need to do a self-awareness. So, take those areas. I can tell you the areas that we use. We use an area of family. We use an area of faith, whatever that is for you. The area of my friends, my finances, area of fun in my life, area of fitness. And then as a bonus, we'll throw in, the personal growth. Because again, if I'm not taking care of me, I'm not going to be around to impact all those other people that are around me. And so let me break that down again. I went through it quick. So what do you mean when it's fitness? Well, how are you taking care of your body? Scale of 1 to 10. Area of your faith. What are you doing for spiritual enlightenment? How healthy are you there? Scale of 1 to 10. Family. I'm talking about your immediate family, those that you are directly responsible for. How are you doing in that area on a scale of 1 to 10? Your friends, that's your community. You may have a big community, you may have a small community. I'm not just talking about people that follow you on Facebook. I'm talking about your friend circle. Those people, that you can count on. For most people, they can count those people that they can count on in their life on one hand, that type of friendship. So you're making time for that. Or has that been pushed to the side because you're too busy chasing a goal? And your finances, so your money. Money is important. We're not here, obviously, on a business podcast, we know how important that is. Why? Because money allows you to have freedom of choice. Money allows you to get behind projects that you're passionate about and you're important and push those things forward. Money also brings a certain amount of security for those that are around you, where they're not having to wonder about where their next meal is going to come from, how they're going to make the next payment. So, there's a lot of benefits, obviously, for paying attention in the area of your finances. And then fun. Yes, sometimes you need hobbies. So that fun represents your hobbies. How are you doing in there? Well, I don't really have any. All I do is work all the time. It's not healthy. You don't need to play all the time, but you need to have something that causes you to disconnect, where you can refresh. Yes, you get enjoyment out of it, but the side benefit of that is suddenly you begin to refocus. And so when you come back into the game, when you come back into chasing the dream and working and into those areas of responsibility, you're coming back in with just a new freshness, a new perspective, a new focus on the same thing you're looking at, but you're just looking at it differently. So it's important. So you need to understand your needs. That's where your self-evaluation in all these areas comes from. And you need to be honest about it. And then you begin to create a plan. Like, okay, I'm kind of sucking it up in the area with my family because I'm not present. I made it a goal to get home, but when I'm home, I'm on the phone all the time. I'm on my computer all the time. I'm working all the time. I'm taking phone calls all the time. So I'm not really present. So I need to work on that. Okay, so you create a plan. Well, what is that plan? Well, maybe that plan is you're going to power down some of your devices for a certain period of time. Maybe when you walk in the door, you're very intentional about what those steps are, and it's not walking straight in and sitting down and maybe watching the news or watching television while you're eating, when you should be spending time engaged with your family. Whatever that is, you make a plan for that. The awareness allows me to know this is where I need to focus. The plan is how do I fix it? And then the third part is how am I going to make that happen? Just make it happen. In other words, make it a priority. Discipline yourself. Set things in motion where you're going to be able to execute on that plan. Super important. I love what Andy Stanley said. He said, everybody ends up somewhere in life. He said, blessed are those who end up somewhere on purpose. It kind of goes back to what I was saying a while ago. Nobody drifts to success. And I think many of us may be listening to this today. You may have drifted to a place in your life that you never intended to be. I never intended to feel like my marriage that I had a roommate. I never intended, not to have a close relationship with my kids. I never intended to isolate my closest friends. I never intended to push myself so hard that, I would be in this kind of physical condition. Well, not intentionally, but you drifted there. So I'm telling you, come up with a plan, do a self-awareness, do an assessment, get a plan, and then begin to work the plan and make it happen. Today's the day to begin to make those kind of moves. So the importance of a big picture is it takes time and energy to build something. I can come up with a great idea of like, I want to lose 50 pounds this year. That can be a great idea. And I can go online and buy the latest, greatest access to a workout program, or I could, go buy myself a year's gym membership. But unless I make that happen over a consistent basis and be able to see incremental progress, I'm not going to have the desired result that I want at the end of the year. Even though I desire it, I have to have a plan to make that happen. The awareness is I need to do it, making a plan on how I can do it, and then doing it. And so you need to be able to walk these things out. What will happen is if I have this vision of where I want to end up, big picture end in mind, it helps me clarify my priorities. So think about this with me for a minute. If I do that in the area of my family, so where I want to end up at the end of my life, what I'm doing now is I'm taking the ultimate destination and I'm coming all the way back to, okay, if I'm going to end up there, let me break this down into bite-sized portions. Sometimes I think we look at challenges in our life that maybe we've been struggling in over and over and over again. And it's like, I get some energy, I get some inspiration, I try, I do good for a little while, and then I just fall back. And eventually you just want to quit because it becomes very discouraging. It's like trying to eat an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so I look at where I want my life to end up, what I want people to say about me, which is my eulogy, and I begin to back that up. Well, what is my life? Well, my life is all these areas that we talked about. It's the area of my family. It is the area of my finances, my fitness, my fun, my friends, all this stuff. That makes up who I am. And so now I begin to focus on those one bite at a time in each one of those areas. What happens is when I know what I want that to look like in the area of my, let's say my family, what I want to do is I want to be more present with my family. I want my wife to feel like I could be her trusted advisor. I want my kids to know that I have their back no matter what, and that I'm their biggest cheerleader. Okay. And so if that's the plan and the vision for that area of my life, then what happens is this begins to clarify my priorities. See, if I don't know what I want that to look like, it's really hard to make those decisions in life that come flying at us at 110 mile an hour. But if I know what I want that to look like, my priorities become clarified. So in other words, I don't have enough time to do everything that I need to do. But because I know that this is important and I've made this commitment, I've made this investment, spend this amount of time with my wife or go to this particular event or take my, kids camping or whatever the case might be, it begins to clarify my priorities. So now there's some things that maybe I wanted to do, but I know I need to say no to. Because if I say yes to them, I'm not going to be able to follow through with the things that I know I've already said yes to and I really need to do. And those things, even though they're enjoyable, they're not moving me closer to my goal. Does that make sense? And so that big picture begins to bring clarity into these small day-to-day decisions that we have to make. You can filter all these things that begin to pop up inevitably in your life because they're going to be able to make smarter decisions once you have this life plan in place. You can manage your work-life balance better. Why? Because you're going to look at it more from a holistic approach. Because everything in our life is integrated. I can't say yes to one thing over here to not affect me over here. And when I have a big picture now, I'm looking at how is this affecting that? And it causes you to feel like you're in charge of your life, which you should be, versus everyone else being in charge of your life and you just going home feeling frustrated. I can't please anybody. I have no time for myself. I can't get anything done. I'm ready to pull my hair out. It's not a very enjoyable way to live. You can be busy and have a lot of things going on and be responsible to a lot of people and responsible for a lot of people, but still feel like that you're in control of the ship. That's why I think sometimes when you see entrepreneurs that are uber successful and they work a lot and they don't get burned out, because even though they're doing a lot, they're in control mentally of what they're doing, and they're enjoying aspects of what they're doing, and they're bought in, and so it's not draining them all the time. Somehow they have created some boundaries and taken back control, of their time, and they've not given their life over to someone else in the process of being able to do that. You don't have to own the business to do that. It's a mindset shift that you need to do with your own life. Anyway. You need to become the actor in your own movie. You wrote the script. Execute it. Execute it. This is your story. You get one. You're the actor in it. What do you want that to look like? And then begin to reprogram that. If you push pause on this and just look back a little bit in your history and there's things in there that you're not happy about, things you're not proud of, change them. It's your story. Rewrite the chapter. Act differently, make different choices, implement that. Maybe you need to go through and weed out some things. I was listening to a podcast myself today, and it was fascinating. They were talking about, now these people obviously were very, very wealthy. They had a lot of resources. And they were talking about how they were outsourcing certain aspects of their life. And you don't have to be wealthy to do this. But what you do need to realize is you need to understand what your hourly value is. You think about that. Some of the tasks that you're doing that pull you away from some things that actually could be profitable financially for you, they don't make sense. Some of you probably should stop mowing the grass. Some of you probably should stop changing your own oil. There's certain things that, for 6 hours a week or 8 hours a week, I could hire somebody to do this. Well, what is your 8 hours a week worth? I mean, literally, financially, what are the 8 hours a week worth? If those were invested in your career path, would that be a good exchange? And some of those things, you pull out, and if I had that time, how much is that worth to invest, a couple hours more a week with my kids? It's a mind shift. Maybe you weren't raised that way. So when you weren't raised that way, you don't even think outside that box. It's like, I've got 24 hours a day, and when that's up, it's up. I just can't do anything else. You will reach a point where there's nothing else you can do. But you can begin to borrow other people's time. And think about it. If you're someone that if you make $40 an hour and you can get somebody to do some of the work that needs to be done around your house that you're having to do on the weekends and 2 nights a week, twice a month, and you could hire that for $15 an hour. Is that not a good exchange? Yeah. And you could be spending that time with your family or not having to stay up later to try to finish the other extra responsibilities you had in your career. So sometimes it's working smarter, not harder. But, I can't have that clarity to make those decisions if I don't really have this target that I'm moving towards. And that one big target, it's easy to say, this is what I want people to say about me at the end of my life. Well, yeah, we all want someone to say something flattering, and we hope we've lived a life, that's impacted other people. But again, it doesn't happen by accident. So how am I doing in all these smaller areas? Now I have that clarity to begin to make the decisions that I need to make. I want to leave you with this today. And if you don't have this book, I'd encourage you to go get it. Where Brownie wrote this book, and it was called The Top 5 Regrets of Dying People. And this was based on a guy that spent the last 12 weeks with people as they were dying. And these are the top 5 regrets that all these people had. And the first one was, he said, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. I dare say as I read these, some of you, this is going to resonate with you. You heard the stories like I went and, I've been an accountant for 30 years and I hated it. Well, why did you become an accountant? Well, my parents told me that I needed to do something that would always be there, and I was pretty good with numbers, and they said, you need to go be an accountant. And so I just listened, and I spent 4 years and I had a whole lot of debt, and I got out and realized I didn't like accounting, but I'd invested so much into that, already, and I just kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and they were miserable their whole life. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Now, nobody has this desire to be known as a lazy person that's a slackard, but this is probably coming from somebody that was a workaholic that cost them something that was far more valuable than money. See, in the end, the things that are most valuable to us are not going to be able to be measured in your bank account. And this is someone that has probably lived a life of regret. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. How many of those people that you'd wish you just went back and said, you know what? I'm really sorry about how I handled that. Can we be friends again? Or maybe that person that you really deeply cared for, but you just couldn't come up with enough courage to really tell them how special they were in your life because you weren't at an emotional state to risk being hurt again. So you just kept it in and you lived a life of loneliness. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Many of us can say, I have these friends in my life and, I don't see them for a decade and they come in and we just pick up right where we left off. Wow. There's something to that is really, really special. And there's something really, really lazy about taking that relationship for granted and not investing in it for a decade. And so here's someone that's saying, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. And number 5, I wish that I'd let myself be happier. Are you chasing what everybody else wants you to do? Are you doing what everybody else thinks is best for your life? Are you measuring your life based on what somebody else says? When you do this, now you're successful? Are you looking for everybody else's stamp of approval? Are you doing what you were created to do? Are you fulfilled and passionate about what you're pouring your life into? You can make more money. There's a lot of things you can do to, exchange things for more money. There's nothing you can do to exchange and get more time back. And when you spend that, it's gone forever. So your life plan, guys, it's more than just a document that you're going to build. It's a lifelong practice to avoid coming to the end of your life and it being filled with regret. I hope this was helpful today. I really want to encourage you. We'll drop a couple things in the show notes. Go do an assessment in these different categories in your life. See how you're doing. Then create a vision for what you want it to look like. And then come up with an action plan on how you're going to make that happen. And if you'll do those things in each one of those areas of your life, it won't seem so overwhelming. It will give you a place to start. And in the end, what you want people to say in that eulogy, you'll be crafting that today, one step at a time. Listen, we'll see you next time on the Culture-Neer Podcast. Terry Gwaltney from the Culture-Neer Podcast. Listen, I want to say thank you for listening to the podcast today. I also want to encourage you to help us get the message out to more people. If you could like, share, and review this content on wherever you consume it, if you go to YouTube or LinkedIn or just whatever your social media channels are, and you could even share it, that would be a big help to us here at the Culture-Neer Podcast. Also, if you'd like some more information, you can go to www.terrygwaltney.com, where we have updates. We also have more resources. We share articles there. And you also can find our new book there called The Culture-Neer. Again, we want to thank you again for taking time just to listen to the podcast or view it on YouTube. It's our goal to spend 20 or 30 minutes each time we're together to help grow your culture to a point where your employees refuse to leave and your customers can't resist. This is Terry. We'll talk to you soon.